94 Through the Shark, Everything That Rocks. We have what might be a familiar face to the radio station, a really cool guy, and Will Dickerson, extremely talented. He wrote a book called Detour Hollywood. And Will, the main reason why I wanted to talk to you about this, especially now that it's in audiobook form, is because you're hearing about people now trying to chase their dreams. Everybody's trying to do new things, not just the new year, but like the awakening after the pandemic. And your book is how to direct a micro budget film, or any film for that matter. And I believe, from what I heard, the concept is anybody can do this.
Oh, 100%, right? Especially with how technology has advanced. I mean, the type of cameras that are available on just the iPhone alone. Anyone with a good story can go out and make a quality film and also distribute it, right? So there's no reason not to do it. So my book addresses how to do that, right? I mean, first you need an idea that is realistic, right? You don't not that you can't go out and make a sci-fi rock opera using your iPhone. I don't recommend it because it's not cheap and it's probably going to be a bit too much to bite off. So you want to create a story that involves minimal characters, 1 to 3 main characters, minimal locations. 65% of the movie should be the same location, maybe a few others, and give yourself those creative limitations. And from that point on, create a story and use what's at your disposal, right? I mean, that's what I did when I went to film. I moved out to LA. I don't know, almost 2 decades ago. Went to film school and I graduated, and it was very difficult to get a movie made because, like most aspiring directors, you you get that question like, okay, well, you've never directed a feature before, so why should I entrust you to do that? So how do you get entrusted? You had to have directed it before. So the only way to do that is just to go out and do it yourself. And my book is basically, hopefully, it's there to give people who were like me back then the freedom to go to do that.
You need the job to get experience. You need experience to get a job. We're talking to Will Dickerson. His book, Detour Hollywood, How to Direct a Micro Budget Film, or any film for that matter. Now it's an audio book.
Yeah.
Will, you mentioned 65% of the film should be one location. That reminds me of the early days of film when films relied on dialogue
Yeah.
more than action and things like that. So, what are the challenges of keeping an audience engaged when the scenery they're looking at doesn't change much?
I mean, that's a tremendous question. So, and Detour, the movie, is a case study of that in a sense because it's one man trapped in a car for most of the movie. And I remember pitching it to people, and they asked me like, why would I want to watch that? Because it risks being very boring, right? But I was like, look, if you put a human being in a life and death situation, it can be compelling, but you need to film it in a way that's compelling. So we broke it down into 5 different visual sections, and I used the 5 stages of grief as the structure. So the first section is the denial section. Like, I can't believe I'm caught in this car underground, and this is actually happening to me. I can't be buried alive, can I? Then there's the anger section where he's lashing out at this circumstance. Then the bargaining, like, oh God, can you help me? Is there any, I don't deserve this. And then the despair, wallowing it and bottoming out in this moment. And then the acceptance, where he has to accept the fact, okay, you know what? To get out of here, I have to risk dying. And there's a key moment in the film where there's a sunroof that's been cracking the entire time, and he's been trying to stop it from cracking, but now he has to make the decision, you know what? The only way out of here is to crack it myself and break through. But in doing so, I risk dying. But that's the only way I can get out, right? So the movie leads up to that moment, and then it's the acceptance phase. So once I knew that we were focusing on those 5 emotional processes, I decided to film each one differently. So yes, the same location, same actor, but visually everything's very different, and it makes sure your eyes are as dazzled as possible throughout.
So, I mean, those are some very interesting concepts and tricks. Now, what else are you going to learn in Detour Hollywood, How to Direct a Micro Budget Film, the audiobook, to help somebody else come up with their own concept? Because now you cornered the market on people being in their car.
Yeah, it's well, I don't know. I mean, maybe someone out there wants to pitch me a sequel of the man buried alive in a school bus underground. I'm not sure what it is. I mean, ideas are hard to really come by. They just kind of come out of the air. But I think if you give yourself those limitations of, okay, well, only have a certain amount of money, or I only have this many actors, then and locations, then I think it could come to you. Also, like I write in the book, like the book is divided into very practical sort of how to direct, um, knowledge that I've sort of accumulated throughout my career, and I teach in the classroom. I was telling you before, I teach at Hofstra University, which is right nearby, and I love teaching. I love being able to communicate what I've learned, and those years teaching helped me put everything in the book. And so the first half deals with how to write a script, the key ingredients to directing. I also think theme is a big deal when you're trying to figure out what kind of story you want to make, because I think a lot of young filmmakers get trapped in this idea of style over substance. Like a lot of students come up to me, like, I want to make a movie that's like Tarantino or like Scorsese. It's like, well, that's great. I mean, I love those filmmakers too, but you don't chase a style. You chase a theme. Like, what is your movie really about? Because the theme is what we relate to in a movie, right? So I think, trying to distill what's really important, about just the formal aspect of making a movie, is what the first half of the movie is about. Excuse me, the first half of the book. The second half is a deep dive into my experiences making DETOUR, which was like a kid out of film school in Hollywood. I had a couple of bucks to make a movie. Then someone liked the script, and I had this star attached and that star, and I had to rewrite it, and I almost got fired. So it's like this really wild trip down. Okay, you want to break into Hollywood? Well, learn from my mistakes and this first before you try it.
We're talking to Will Dickerson about his book, Detour Hollywood, How to Direct a Micro Budget Film or any film for that matter. It's an audio book. Now, you have had such an interesting career because you pursued acting. Well, you pursue making films,
Yeah.
but music has always been your big passion. You've been able to tie the two together. And now social media has sort of given you a third avenue, so to speak, to at least get your stuff out there.
Yeah.
So, uh, is there a part in the book where, or at least do you realize that you have to keep your mind open for anything, because a lot of the stuff that happened to you can't plan for.
You can't. I mean, I think no, you're right. I mean, there's so much luck involved in this business, right? In both businesses, the music and movie business. But I think like so much, the trick is to work as hard as you can, to make sure you put yourself in the right place at the right time, and then you could take advantage of it.
Yeah.
Like for instance, like Detour, I love the film. It's my first movie. For what it was, it did well. We sold it for a lot more than we made it for, and it was a springboard for my career as a director. But now I made that 10 years ago, and then I hadn't really heard much about it until like 6 months ago. It blew up on TikTok. Like it's had this resurgence, in these summary videos. Like if you search for buried alive or man in a car or mudslide on TikTok, you will find like these little 5-minute summaries of my movie, and they're getting tens of millions of views, and it blows my mind. And I guess what they're doing is people are looking at it to see what the character did in that situation to get out, like what items in his car did he use to, and people are finding like a vicarious thrill. And I'm like, just watch. Well, that's why I made the movie. Watch the movie. But I don't. I like that it's getting all this renewed attention, but it's weird. I don't really understand TikTok totally.
You see, we talked about luck, but what you just said about just working hard to make sure you're in the right place at the right time. I tell kids that ask me all the time about getting into radio, well, you have to be at the radio station. You'll never know if somebody does get sick and you will have to fill in, but you have to
Yeah,
be there.
exactly.
So, I know how hard you've worked, but when you look at the book, Detour Hollywood, How to Direct a Micro Budget Film or any film for that matter, what would the reader learn as far as how to work and where to start and where to be within a certain time?
I mean, I think so. If you want to direct,
Mhm.
you have to you're in charge of driving the train, right? You need to, and also getting the people on the train, but you need to know when the train leaves the station. Because the thing is, yeah, people, 95% of people in Hollywood talk a big game, like I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, but there are very few people that actually do it. And I think, with DETOUR, one of the things I did was, like, the script was out there, we raised a little bit of money, but it wasn't enough. And every producer was telling me, well, you have to wait until you raise this, and you have to wait until you raise this. Everyone wants to wait, but it's really the job of the director to say, you know what, we're not waiting anymore. I'm moving this train along. And you set a date. And once I did that, I was like, you know what, I don't have enough money to make this film, but we're shooting on June 10th. And we started shooting. We literally did. And then what happened was, I knew I couldn't finish the movie without other people's help. But then I invited the producers who said no and wanted me to wait to set, and I showed them the dailies. And once they saw that it became real, they said, you know what, we're on board. I mean, it might seem weird, but manifesting the reality of it, just do it. And then there's a physical thing happening. It's become real. And once that happens, people will get on the train.
So, Will, you're still primarily a filmmaker. As we talked to Will Dickerson about his book, Detour Hollywood, and the book is about making a movie, using Will's book to see your dreams come true. One of your dreams was being a musician. You made a movie called No Alternative. And even though this was your career, that movie led to your dream coming true, right?
Yep, absolutely. I've been a musician for all my life, and it's been such a big part of my life that I made it and ultimately used that part of my life to inspire a film and a book that I wrote many years ago called No Alternative. And it's a very, very autobiographical in many ways. I mean, there's dramatic license in it, of course, but it's inspired by my band and the band members that I've been playing with. There are pseudo versions of themselves in the film. We use music in the movie that we made 20 years ago, and that the movie came out and the soundtrack won the best soundtrack award at the Paris Art Movie Awards. And because of that, we ended up getting a record contract. And this is my band from when we were teenagers. When I was a teenager, yeah, movies were, I hadn't even thought about film school. I was 15, 16. I wanted a record contract. I wanted to become a rock star, as did my friends. We're like, we want a record deal. And through this weird circuitous route of making this movie and bringing attention to the music we made as teenagers, we ended up getting that record deal. And that's been for the past year or so, my primary creative focus has been on Saturday Saints, the name of the band now, on our record. And it was just released in July, and we've been touring and promoting for it for the past several months. So yes, that dream has come true. But in a very, like you said, it was a lot of it was luck, but that opportunity would not have happened if we hadn't done all this work ahead of time, laid the groundwork. You know what I mean?
So does having a band, now that Saturday Saints has a record deal, does that make making movies a little bit easier, knowing that you have your own soundtrack built in if you need one and you don't have to go license songs?
It's not, part of it. Yeah, I think a little bit of that is a help. It relieves me a little bit. I have a project right now that I'm trying to set up that I have people interested in that is also very focused on music, early 90s grunge. And yeah, if I need to produce music for it, I can. Like I have a collective, right, group of people who know how to do it. So I think, yeah, I mean, the music part of it is often the hardest part in these types of movies, but I'm lucky to have that resource with these fellas.
Well, I want to talk to you off mic, but before we wrap up, we have been talking about Detour Hollywood, how to direct a micro budget film or any film for that matter, now in audiobook format. So if somebody came up to you and said, "Hey, Will, why should I read this book?" What will you tell them?
Well, I would tell them that it seems like an impossible task to make a movie, and in many ways, it can be. But if you read what I went through and what I was able to do to get my movie made, you will know that you can do it too, right? So I think it'll give you the confidence to make the movie through learning about my experience, and also my using my practical tutorial tips, right, as to how to make the movie, it'll lend you enough wisdom to get it done, or at least get it started, right? So I think it's a book for newcomers, and also, I mean, people that have been in the business a while that want to make something a little bit more handmade and independent outside the studio system. I feel like it's a book you dog ear, and you can sort of go back and forth and take this tip and that tip, and use it for whatever part of the process you find it helpful for.
Will, hang on. I want to talk to you off mic, but thank you so much for joining us,
Yes.
bro. I look forward to this book, Detour Hollywood: How to Direct a Micro Budget Film. And thank you for making it an audio book because I'm too lazy to read.